it is my great pleasure to introduce Duane Short to you. I know Duane quite well over the last couple of years, and he is one of the most well-qualified people to talk about this topic today. He is an articulation officer at San Diego Miramar College, but he's also been a transfer center director and a career center director at San Diego City College. That's an interesting phone if that's a telephone ring.
I don't know how to turn it off.
That's all right. But Duane also has served in the military. He has been in the Navy, and that means he is a sailor, right? Officer. And he's currently in the reserves with the Navy. So he knows both the academic world and the military world. He also, we sometimes talk about Duane's mind. He is a very clear thinker, and I think you'll enjoy hearing from him today.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks. I don't want to be up on the podium. I'd rather interact down here, and I'd rather make this more informal. But I have to speak into the microphone, so I hope I hope this works out. Everyone can hear me, right, with the microphone? Okay. Okay, good. So thanks, Jeff, for the introduction. My name is Duane. I'm the articulation officer at San Diego Miramar College, and I have a presentation on some information about academic counseling for military and veteran students. But before we start, I kind of want to know why you're here, what you would like to know. So first I'm going to ask a few questions just to make sure I know who's in the audience. Who here is a counselor that works with students, counseling students? Okay, most of you. Thank you. Is there anyone here from that works at a place other than a community college? Okay, and a university or?
No, I'm with the U.S. Department of Labor.
Okay, great. Okay, and you, sir?
We are a private organization providing VRE services to the regional office.
Oh, okay, great. The regional VA office? Yeah, okay, I've been there. Good, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to target this mostly to counselors and mostly to community college folks. The reason I'm here in the first place is, like I said, I'm an articulation officer, and a few years ago it came to light that we had a lot of veteran students that were coming into the community colleges and wanted to transfer, and we go to these articulation officer shindigs every year, and people start asking, well, how does the credit work for military people? They seem to have this experience or training in the military, and how does that translate into community college units? How does it translate to the CSU? What should we be telling them or advising them when they transfer? And we all kind of looked at each other and shrugged and said, none of us know. And so, it turned out I was pretty much the only articulation officer, or at least community college one, that had done basically a career in the military. I'm almost done with my full career, so I knew the military side and I kind of knew the academic side. And so they said, well, Duane, you figure that out, and then you come back and tell us how that's all supposed to work. So that's how I happen to be here doing this. I'm not going to claim I'm an expert in it, but I'll tell you what I've learned and I'll share it with you. And I would prefer for this to be a little more informal. If you have questions as we go along, please ask your question. If I'm going to cover it later, I'll just tell you I'm going to cover it later. And if not, I'd like to address it right then when you have it. So to begin with, is there any burning needs or questions that people have right now as to why you're here? Yeah, Shane. How do you get the chocolate? That's a good question. My observant colleague has seen that there is chocolate up on the table here, right? You do get to earn the chocolate. We're going to play a little game. If you did not get handouts in the back, please get them. If they're all out, which they might be because it's a little larger group than I expected, then please share with your neighbor. And you can, if you answer a joint answer, I'll give you each a chocolate because you're sharing with each other, okay? So we'll explain that in a moment. Catherine, hi.
In the past, veterans were required to declare their major, not through the college, but through wherever they were.
Yeah, the VA, yeah.
And they were required to adhere closely to those classes and nothing but. So is it going to be similar that they get paid to take required classes and only required classes for their stated educational objective? And part two, can they change their major more than once?
All right, those are great questions. Catherine has asked if a student is getting VA benefits and has to declare a major and has to be taking courses towards a major, is that still going to be adhered to, and can they change their major more than once? And sadly, I'm going to have to tell you, I am not an expert in that area, and I don't know. I do know that the status quo is that they do have to declare a major. They have to show that they're progressing towards a particular academic goal. And I believe that is defined by whatever the institution that they're going to right now, their majors. My understanding is that there's some leeway in that, or there's some judgment that can be applied to what the academic goal is by the certifying official. And I have no idea about changing the major. Does anyone know? Yes.
Yeah. So, it's my understanding that you can change the major as many times as you need to change it. As a veterans counselor, I often change majors to fit classes that have already been chosen by the veterans before seeing the counselor. So that's just kind of the GI Bill game, I call it, the little dance. And so, you know, you can change your major as many times as you need to.
Okay, thank you.
I think what's important, I work with veterans too, and is letting them know that, you know, if you're just taking all kinds of stuff, just, you know, we can change your major back and forth, but you're using those benefits so that when you really know what your major is and you're going to need it, you're going to be all done. So it's kind of giving them a little bit of a stretch, a little leeway, but, you know, trying to keep them focused, because, yeah, they have a certain amount of months of benefits. So it's kind of that, but it is kind of the same with the VA.
Okay, good. So the feedback, I'll call on you in just a second. So just to summarize, the feedback we just heard is you can't change your major more than once, but be aware that your benefits run out, and there's a time frame within them. So, you know, let's help students actually identify what their goal is that they're getting to and make sure they can get there while the benefits are going on. Yes,
the former GI Bill, there was definitely a limit on how many programs you could have and change, because I learned that the hard way by trying to change my major once I entered one, and they said, no, you've had too many choices already, you have to stay with what you have. So that must have been a change within the regulations with the current provision.
Thank you.
And then I had one other question, is that I've seen that many colleges evaluate the military transcript totally different from each other. And so we're advising people on what to do for graduation or transfer, and the gaining school will use a totally different idea of how to evaluate and make the articulation, et cetera. So it's, you know, is there any specific standard that has been established by the VA or by some institution somewhere that says it should be a certain way, so there's some kind of uniformity?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're going to cover that in the presentation. That's more of what I'm planning on talking about. You know, the answer is no, basically, but we're but we're trying to get there. Okay, so people that work in this field, articulation folks, are trying to get to that point. And yeah.
My question was related to his second one, in the sense, will you, and it sounds like you will, cover an evaluation of military transcripts and units, and if they're transferable to the community colleges, and what are the criteria for making those decisions?
Yeah, very good. Okay, so that question is about military training and how does that work for credit at the community college, maybe credit at other institutions, and that's what I'd like to focus probably the most on this morning. Sadly, there are no hard and fast answers. Well, there are a few hard and fast answers, some more general answers, but we're going to talk about the current state of where we're at and where we'd like to go. Okay, anything else that you want to make sure I cover or that I disclose to you that I don't know? Yeah.
You know that the UC system is going to start awarding some credit for military experiences.
Yeah.
But it all sounds very mysterious as to how they're going to do that. So if there's any way to know in advance, it's going to be granted down.
Yeah, the question or the comment is the UCs have said that they're going to try to be nicer to military students and award more credit, and they've come out with a statement about that, what the policy statement, which is we're going to, essentially it says we're going to look at military training and we're going to see if it looks like anything at the UC, and if it is, we'll award credit. And is there any way that we can know beforehand? Again, the answer right now is no, there is no way to know beforehand, but the UC, I've spoken to some folks at the UCOP about that issue, and they seem willing or interested in finding ways to do that, you know, finding ways to make it more clear beforehand so we could advise students. And I don't think it's part of the presentation, but it's a good question, and it's one of the ways we're trying to move forward right now with this.
In the past, many years ago, I was working with veterans, assigned to work with veterans in San Diego City. And there was, if I'm remembering correctly, an ACE booklet that broke it all down, what's college credit and wasn't.
The ACE guide?
So are they going to use that again, or is it set aside? Or?
No, the ACE guide is still in force, and we're going to cover that in the presentation too. So, okay, last one, then we'll get started.
Yeah. Is there anything about SB 1440 that American Correctional Provision for Veterans?
The question is there anything about SB 1440 that guarantees transfer for veterans? And I don't believe so. I don't remember anything in SB 1440 specifically addressing veterans. Okay, good. So that's where we're at. Now, there are transfer benefits for veterans through other policies or other rules, but not necessarily through SB 1440. But it's important to note that you're not excluded from it either, right? You can have a veterans deal, and you can also get the SB 1440 deal, and you can have multiple ways of transferring. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so that's just what I did. So my disclaimer was that I don't feel like I'm an expert in this area. It's just that I'm the one that happened to be asked to try and get this stuff together. Okay. All right, this is what we're going to talk about. I have a section on military students, but I think the last presenter did a really good job on that, and I'm going to just zip through that. There might be one slide that I'll show you. Then we're going to talk about sources and uses of credit. This is some stuff people asked about right now. Military training and coursework, military experience, which is different than military training, coursework. And then what I'm calling military-friendly institutions, what that's about, and then national exams, which no one asked about, but we're going to talk a little bit about those, CLEP, DSST, that sort of stuff. And then some best practices that you might want to bring back. Okay, here's some stuff on military services. We've already covered all this. This is interesting, though. It is common for people to move from category to category to be in multiple categories. So, you can be military or a veteran from doing all this stuff. So I know somebody who is all these things all at once. It's not me. Okay. We talked about this. Okay. Here, as counselors, I think that these are probably some of the common barriers you might come across, barriers to education or issues with military students. So one is information, so accurate and complete information about transfer credit, financial aid, all this other stuff. Then culture, we talked about that a little bit this morning in the general session. Unfortunately, many more veterans now have some injury and trauma that they're coming back with, disabilities, mental health issues, and then some financial questions, which were already raised here this morning about the Ed Plan and getting VA benefits and so on. I'm not a VA person. I don't know much about the financial. In fact, I don't know much about any of these, except this is what we're going to talk about this morning in this breakout session, is the information, accurate and complete information about transfer credit, where we're at and what you can tell students. Okay, so let's jump into that. So just as a framework for thinking about this, you can think about military credit, whatever that is, and we'll talk about it in a moment, as sort of a category of transfer credit, broadly. And what I mean by that is, when we think about transfer students, they've got some sort of educational experience at a sending institution of some kind, and they're trying to use that experience to fulfill degree requirements of the receiving institution. That's just kind of the basic concept, right? So for traditional students, a sending institution is prior colleges or universities. It might be AP or IB exams, right? We have tools to figure out how those are going to count towards degree requirements. It might be high school or some sort of tech prep credit that we're going to get, or community colleges, if they go to community college and then transfer to university. And the receiving institutions might be community college or a transfer university. Well, for military students, the sending institutions might be something different. And this is what we're going to talk about. It might be military training or coursework that they've taken in the military, or experience in the military, or other institutions or national exams. And the receiving institutions are the same. Okay, and just like any other sources of credit, transfer credit might fulfill different requirements on the receiving end. It might fulfill unit requirements. And what I mean by that is you need a certain number of units of anything to get a degree, right? To get a bachelor's degree, typically you need 120 semester units of something, okay? So that's one requirement that you need to fulfill for an associate's degree. It's 60 units of something. Then you also need to fulfill specific course or category requirements, so GE or graduation requirements, major or major prep requirements. And these are determined by different things. There could be an articulation agreement that says this credit, we promise this credit will count for this purpose when you transfer. It might be institutional policy where they do something like say, our policy is we're going to always award credit for this type of military experience, or we're always going to award this much credit for an AP test. Or it might be evaluations where each individual student transcript is evaluated separately to see what kind of credit is awarded. That's a case-by-case basis. Okay, so these are the types of credit we're going to talk about. And then for each of these, we're going to talk about the source of the credit, what it is that the student did that gives you credit, that gives you some sort of, that fulfills a requirement. the documentation for it, so how you would actually know that, and then the uses and fulfilling requirements. But first, the acronym game. Okay, this is the important part. This is a chocolate that John asked about. Okay, everyone has handout 1, or if you don't, you have a friend with handout 1. So we're going to go through some acronyms as we go through this. Higher education has lots of acronyms, right? The military also has lots of acronyms. They're very confusing. I don't even remember most of them anymore. So when you do that, you win a prize, which is a chocolate. Sorry, it's not a really good prize. And you get to impress your friends and confound your enemies. So when you see this little guy, that guy right there, that means that it's the acronym game. And the first to shout out the acronym, or maybe we'll raise hands and I'll award you candy. Okay. So let's start by talking about military training and coursework. And so the source of this credit is training or education that's provided by the military to military people, okay? So note, this is not college, right? The military is not an accredited institution of higher education, okay? It is the military. And the training is good training. I mean, it's well put together, and they're very, the military services are very interested in training and educating their folks well. It's usually vocational or occupational in nature. Why? Because that's what they want. They want you to be able to do something at the end of it. So some examples: basic military training, air traffic controller school, basic still photography school. There's all sorts of schools in the military, okay? So that's what that is. Okay, documentation is through the ACE guide. All right, notice the little guy. Anybody know what ACE is? That's the acronym. All right, I heard one. Yeah, see? It's people start shouting it out right away. I heard one over here. Here you go. I always say raise hands, and then people shout out anyway because they want the chocolate. And you know what? The rest of the chocolate I'll put in the back at the end. So if you didn't get one in the game, you can get one afterwards. Okay. So the ACE guide is this. It's a standard reference for recognizing learning in the military, and essentially it's a way of evaluating and translating what happens in the military into civilianese, and they provide credit recommendations for that. One thing that's, I think, is important to note about the ACE guide, particularly for your faculty to note at your campuses, the instructional faculty in particular, is the ACE guide is not made by the military. Okay? It is a civilian organization. They hire civilian professors in the field, in the discipline, and send them to military schools to observe. And they sit there and they look through the curriculum, they watch what happens in the school, they observe the classes, they observe the students, and then they write up their own evaluation of what that was all about. They make decisions about the level of coursework. Is it associate degree level? Is it baccalaureate degree level? Is it graduate level? How many credits should be awarded for it? And a description of what it is. And the ACE guide is online, okay? You can get to it just by Googling ACE. It's like the first thing that shows up, okay? And there's two types of things that you can search in the ACE guide. You can search courses, and you can search occupations, right there. So we're going to search courses just as an example. And I'm just introducing you to how this works. We're going to go into it a little bit more in the future. So I'm going to type in photo, okay? Because my student told me they went to a photography school. And when I type in just the word photo, here are all the different schools that have been evaluated by the ACE guide. Of note, these are not all the schools that teach photography-related things in the military. There are probably many more. These are just the ones that have been evaluated by that group of photography professors that went out to see what's going on at that school to evaluate it. And they don't evaluate schools for a variety of reasons. Like one reason is that the school is too short, such that they think it will be a unit or less than a unit of credit. They just don't bother with it because it doesn't seem worth it for that point. Or if the school is classified in nature, they're not going to get, the people can't come see it because they don't have security clearances to go and see the school. Okay. So let's look at this one just as an example, basic still photography. And so here it is. This is what this group of faculty members wrote up about the class, okay? It shows where the school is offered. It shows location, length of time, learning outcomes. Note that this isn't much. There's information in here that's kind of like the information we might see on a course outline, okay? It's not a course outline. It doesn't go into that much depth, unfortunately, but it does cover some things. And it shows learning outcomes. It shows the length of time and so on. It shows the modes of instruction. And at the bottom, it has a credit recommendation. See that? It has version 1, version 2, and so on. The versions refer to where the school is taught and sometimes when it was taught. So see, it says version 1 at the top and version 2. Version 1 was 13 to 14 weeks, and version 2 is only 12 weeks. The military calls it the same school, but different schoolhouses might teach it a little differently. Okay, and then the credit recommendation, it tells you what this group that evaluated it thought you should give credit for. Okay, it says in the lower division baccalaureate associate degree category, 3 semester hours in basic photography and 3 in darkroom procedures. Okay, so how is this relevant for anything? Well, if your student took this class and is coming to your school and wants to get a degree in photography, or they're trying to clear a requirement that maybe your photography class clears, maybe this is something that would work for that purpose, and we'll talk about that. Okay, how do you know whether the student actually was in that class, if they really took that photography class? They told you they took some sort of photography thing. How do you know? Well, the documentation is on these military transcripts. And look at all these different acronyms. So DD-285, DD-295 is an evaluation of learning experiences during military service. It's a government form. It's obsolete. They don't use them anymore, but if you have some older veterans coming back, you might see them. And I don't think I have an example here, but I can find one for you if you really want to see it. Then there are all these acronyms for other services. Would anyone like to look up one of the acronyms and earn a chocolate? Yes, in the back.
SMART is Sailor Marine, American Council on Registered Transcript.
Okay, thank you.
CCAF, Community College of the Air Force.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Yes, question. Yes, sir.
This probably dates me, but wouldn't that information also be included on the DD-214?
So, some of it is and some of it is not. We're going to look at the DD-214. Yeah, good question. Okay. This goes much more in depth into it, these things. And we're going to look at an example military transcript. You probably grabbed one in the back if we had enough. Okay, so the military transcripts list military course completions. They list military experience. They list some national exam results, like if a student took a CLEP test or something like that while they were in the military, it'll list that, and other learning experiences. There's an example in the back, so you can kind of glance through the example and see those, see what they look like. Okay, and we'll look through that as well. Okay, so here they are. This is the example you have. So first it lists military course completions. There's military experience. There's national exams like CLEP. There's other learning experiences. So note in the other learning experiences they say, yeah, the student did this stuff, but we didn't evaluate it for A's for a number of different reasons. And it'll tell you those different reasons. At the top of each of the military courses, that's what we're talking about right now, at the top of each of the courses, it has this ACE identifier and this military course ID. See that on the right-hand side? So when you're looking at the transcript, you can go to the ACE guide online, and you can enter that number. Okay, that's the secret code for getting to the ACE guide to translate into civilianese what that's all about. So you enter that code, and then click on what it is. There's basic military training, and here it tells you what that's about. Okay, recruit training. It says, you know, they get yelled at and do push-ups, right? No, they say other things, but that's what happens. You get yelled at and you do push-ups. Lower division, baccalaureate, associate degree category, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there's a credit recommendation. But on the transcript, they were nice about it, and they added the credit recommendation there as well. They didn't add everything that you can look up at the ACE guide. If you need more information, you can look it up in the ACE guide, but if you're just looking for the credit recommendation and a short description, you'll get it on the transcript itself. Okay, on to the DD-214.
May I ask a question on that one?
Yes, sir.
We have this, and that's what we would call an unofficial transcript. Is there, since the evaluators at our school are requiring official transcripts or everything, is there a way of getting an official copy of this, and how difficult is that to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. The question is, if the student hands this to you in paper, it's unofficial. How do we get an official copy? There is an official copy. It will get sent directly to your school from the military service. Each service has a different method of doing that. It might be in this presentation later on. If it's not, I'm going to stick my cards in the back, and you can contact me, and I'll figure out how to do it. It shouldn't be hard to find it on the web either, and the student will have access to it. So I've done that myself. I have a transcript. I have a smart transcript, and I've sent it to my schools. And it was a matter of logging onto a website and just certifying that I want them to send it. And you probably know better than I do in the back. That's why you're raising your hand.
From my experience, when I ordered mine through Smart, there was an actual link on there that allows you to click on it to order officials, and then you can input all the information and then the release to the school as well, so that it will send it straight to you.
Okay, great, thanks. So the answer was, yeah, on the Smart transcript, you can just put in the information it'll send to the school.
Now, that was a couple years ago. I don't know how it's working now.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yes?
Is there a fee for that? Well, is that free?
No, I paid $10 to order my official.
Thank you. You can get it for free now.
Okay, yeah, thanks, David. Hi. Yeah, okay, so the answer is they're free now. Okay, did you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very simple process, but the student cannot hand in an official transcript. It has to come through the mail to the school directly. I mean, if a student comes in and hands you a transcript, an official transcript, I mean, it's no longer official.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so the comment is, remember that official transcripts need to come through the mail. Yeah, in the back. User.
Now the arts transcripts are sent via email now. It's no longer through the mail. You have to have someone to receive that email.
Okay, interesting. Arts are sent through email. Yes, sir.
Students actually now can turn in their official transcripts as long as there's a sealed envelope.
Okay, possibly official with sealed envelopes. You know, before we jump into that, I imagine it's campus by campus on what your policy is on what's official or what's unofficial with sealed envelopes. Yeah, yeah. I've brought transcripts before with sealed envelopes and had them accepted, but I believe that there are some campuses that maybe don't want that, that want them sent directly. Okay. Okay, this is what a DD-214 looks like. Notice it's not quite as friendly as the transcript, right? Okay. It does have some information that might help you or help your school to, if you have policies about awarding credit for military service, if the student doesn't have a military transcript or if they didn't send their military transcript, you don't have it for some reason, you can get some information off of this. So you can get information about how long they served, for example. There it is. So some institutions have policies about awarding credit based on a certain length of time that the student has served. So for example, in the San Diego Community College District, we clear certain requirements for students that have served at least 6 months in active duty. So that's one way to sort of to figure that out if you don't get the transcript. It also lists some of the, they say primary specialty. It's basically military experience, military work experience is listed on here. And military education is listed on here. But notice it doesn't have that nice secret code that you can use to type into the ACE guide. You would have to, if this is all you have and you wanted to get information about it in the ACE guide, you'd have to type this stuff in and figure out what, try to search for it. Okay, how do institutions use this in fulfilling requirements? Well, remember we talked about the different kinds of requirements you might fulfill. So unit requirements, this is the one I would say that is most well developed in California. Many institutions award credit as recommended by the ACE guide. Remember we looked at that credit part and it talked about lower division, upper division, and so on. But some questions that institutions might have is, are they going to do this by the ACE guide, and which categories of ACE guide credit? You might also use it to fulfill something like GE or graduation requirements, a health or PE requirement. I know our district uses it to fulfill those if a student has military service. Perhaps a language requirement if a student went to the Defense Language Institute, or if they learned a foreign language while in the service, you could do that. Maybe there's other ways to clear it. We're going to talk about some examples in a moment. Here's the CSU policy. The CSU has, in recent years, has taken steps to try and standardize more how they award credit. And also how to publicize that more so that it's more clear to the students and counselors. So the CSU's policy is they will award units of credit as recommended by the ACE guide, okay, for lower division baccalaureate credit or higher. So anything that says associate degree credit, they won't award, but lower division baccalaureate credit and higher they will. And this applies both towards the upper division transfer requirement and the graduation requirement. So if you have a student that wants to transfer to the CSU and they have this credit, you get to add it to the number of units a student is, the number of transferable units a student's getting from your institution to get to the 60. okay? So let's say they came in and when their ACE guide was evaluated for this, there were 15 units of credit that the ACE guide said was lower division baccalaureate credit or higher. They only have 45 units left to get to the 60 units for transfer. Everyone follow me? Okay. And it also counts obviously towards the graduation requirement, so that means they fulfilled that much credit towards their graduation requirement as well. Doesn't necessarily mean it clears anything, any particular requirements, it's just part of the unit credit, okay? But it can also be used for GE and graduation requirements. System-wide, their policy right now is that if the community college certifies CSUG Area E using military service, every CSU campus will accept it, okay? But if you don't certify it, it's campus by campus, okay? So if we certify it, it's good. If we don't certify it, it might be cleared and it might not be cleared. Their policy also states that each CSU campus is supposed to do their own evaluation when the student applies or gets there to determine what they're going to clear. So it's possible that some campuses may clear other requirements with military credit. We just don't know beforehand because there hasn't been a system-wide policy on it. Question in the back. Okay.
Does the CSUs say that the DD 214 will grant Area E for transfer credit, lifelong learning, as long as on their military transcript there are 3 extra units that we have not used in any other category? So I think that's something that if that's true, that's what the CSUs have said to our school. So I think that's something that needs to be maybe acknowledged.
Okay, so the comment is your understanding is the CSU will clear it, but only if there's 3 units that hasn't been used to fulfill any other requirements?
Correct. Cal State Fullerton did not accept one of our students because we used most of the credits as elective transfer, and then we tried to give credit for Area E as well, and they said they were short one unit. Did you certify Area E? Yeah, we certified because you're supposed to have 3 units in that area, so we certified 3 units, but they had to have those 3 units free on their military transfer.
Okay, so the point is, if you're going to use the 3 units to certify Area E, at least Fullerton wants to make sure that they're not being used for any other purpose, that they're only being used to certify Area. That's the first time I've heard that myself. So yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I would say that maybe that's something worth pursuing with the chancellor's office to see if there's some exception to this policy. Because the way that they've told me twice now is, you know, if you certify it, it's good. If you certify it for Area E and we can see that the student actually has a military credit, it's good. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the key, that they have 3 units that we haven't used, right, in another area.
Okay.
They only have 3 units left.
Yeah, it has to be 3 units not used in the other area. Okay, thank you. Okay. How do you use it for major prep requirements? Right now there's nothing statewide that you can look at and say this clears particular major prep requirements, at least not to my knowledge. But you might use it. An individual institution might use it. Now, I have found that most of the time the student's major that they're pursuing, you know, more often than not, doesn't have anything to do with what they did in the military. And so if that's the case, it's unlikely that any of their coursework is really going to clear major prep requirements, okay? But sometimes a student is pursuing something that they did in the military. So an example that I've seen at my campus is a student that maybe was a yeoman or a personnelman or somebody that did administrative type work. They learned how to type, they learned how to do Microsoft Office, they learned all sorts of office procedures, and then they're coming to get an associate's degree in office technology, something like that. Yeah, you know, that might work, and it kind of makes sense, right? We wouldn't want to make the student learn to type again if they already know how to type. We wouldn't want to make them learn Microsoft Word again if they already know all about Microsoft Word. So that's what you would look for. The other thing I have found is that it can be a challenge to find sufficient documentation for articulation or for evaluations. And what I mean by that is the ACE Guide's nice. It has this little summary and it tells you how many credits you should award. But I have found in my own work that that's sometimes not sufficient with the instructional faculty that are the ones that actually decide whether to clear the requirement. Okay. So what do you do about that? I've tried 2 different things. One thing I've done is I have printed out not just the information from the ACE Guide, but there's also a whole section in the ACE Guide that talks about how that information is generated. I have found that most people don't understand that it's actually a group of faculty in that discipline that go and evaluate it. And so that's why I explained that at the beginning, and I find that sometimes makes a difference with faculty to know that it's civilian faculty members that have gone and evaluated it. The other thing I've done when we get a lot of students that come with a particular course is we go to the actual military schoolhouse, we contact them and ask them for some more in-depth curricular information, and then we can provide that to the faculty member. So those are two thoughts. Okay, here's how, this is back to our photography example. Like I said before, the learning outcomes are described there, so this is something you might use when you're trying to help a student clear a particular requirement. And this is the part about instruction that tells you what it is that they, how they learn this stuff. Okay, so that's sort of military coursework and using the ACE guide. Any other questions on that before I move forward, or comments? Yes?
This is just a general question from the audience for community colleges. If you're a multi-district campus, is your district requiring that all the schools have the same policies towards vets, or is there differences between colleges? How does that affect veterans?
That's a good question. I'll answer for my district. We're a multi-college district. There's 3 of us. However, we're very aligned. We have aligned curriculum. I think the only one that has 100% aligned curriculum. And our policy is there's the same evaluation policy for veterans. However, that said, we all have different majors sometimes. We don't all teach the same subject. So it's possible that a student might petition to clear a major requirement or something like that at one college, and it gets granted for that one college's degree, but not for another college's degree. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
How about the idea of a person that has a lot of training background in an area and is not getting credit? What's the application of CLEP or credit by exam? How does that work?
Yeah, good. The question is about CLEP and credit by exam and whether that can be used to clear credit. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Thanks. And if I don't answer your question, ask me again afterwards. Yeah. Multi-campus district.
We have kind of, not just for vets, but for all of our students, that if they're taking a class that I work at Trade Tech or Los Angeles City, it's almost, we check the course description, but it's almost a given that it's in line and that we will definitely give them the credit. I haven't had any problems with my vets or my regular students having any kind of issue with that.
Okay, so in LA, it's more of a informal understanding that you would honor each other's evaluations. Okay, yes?
A couple of comments or maybe questions, I don't know, but just as a reminder to myself, certification is not automatic. Right, so each school has to have their student petition for or apply to the certification.
Yeah, GE certification?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, if you have, for instance, a veteran who's completed 6 courses over here, and then the major perhaps only has 6 courses, do you know of any conflict with, well, you can't have all of them done, like residency kind of thing?
Yeah, the question is are there cases where a student might have cleared every requirement in the major, but they won't be able to graduate in that major? I think that's a campus by campus or district by district decision. I know in my district, we recently set a rule that you had to have 6 units, I think it is, within a major. So in that case, I know we sometimes do substitutions where if you've cleared everything, you say, okay, well, let's talk to the faculty and pick 2 more classes that we can say are in the major. Yeah. No.
I was wondering about how it's not written on the ACE, and it really is kind of hard to prove in this day and age in the military. The servicemen and women are out there in the field, and they're having to do things that don't generally always fall into their occupational field that they didn't go to school for. What I keep running into at school talking to my fellow veterans is the combat medics, where they went to school, they got X amount of training, which might not necessarily qualify for the transfer, but then they were overseas in Iraq or in Afghanistan and performing those jobs and doing even more than they were trained for a lot longer. And now they come back and then they're having to take, I'm going to be a nurse. You have to take how to run an IV.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think the core of this issue is, especially nowadays with the real-world application that's happening, veterans may have significant experience and skills and knowledge that they develop not just through formal coursework, but actually on-the-job training, essentially. And the challenge we have in higher education is pretty much everything has to be documented somehow. So how do you document that training? And I have a couple of ideas for that. I think maybe it's most appropriate to talk about those in the national exam part and the credit by exam. I mean, those are some ways to do it, but that's a great point. Okay, one more. Yeah.
So you can use arts and smarts transcripts to clear CSU general education or I guess general education requirements for certification? Or?
You can, no, just area E for CSU GE, yeah.
Okay, so arts and smarts has been clear.
Nothing other than area E for CSU GE, right? As of right now. Yeah. I mean, what's nice that has changed fairly recently is the UC and the CSU systems are very interested in finding ways to help award credit for learning that's taken place in the military. They're open to that. And they also recognize that it's not all that helpful just to say, yeah, we're giving elective credit. I mean, they've done that for a while, but we all know that a lot of students have plenty more units of credit than they actually need, right? So now the conversation is shifting more towards how do we find ways to award GE, you know, to clear GE requirements, to clear major requirements, to clear other graduation requirements. And that's really where we've gotten to now in the state. And I think we're just starting that process. But yeah, good point. Okay, so let's talk about briefly military experience. So what I'm talking about here is work experience in a particular occupation and rank in the military. Kind of similar but different to what you were talking about. You were talking about the on-the-job training sort of thing. This is more like documented work experience, your job specialty. So if you were a supply clerk, that's what you were trained at, that's what you've worked in. So here's some examples. This is documented both on the military transcript and on the DD-214, like we talked about. The only difference is when you're trying to find the more in-depth information on the ACE guide, you use the occupations search rather than the course search, because this is not training, it's an occupation. So here's an example. This person was an aviation support equipment technician. Notice that it's called an occupation. Okay, there's still a credit recommendation for it at the bottom. Okay, so it's same thing. Someone went out and looked at it and said, well, if you're going to award credit for experience, this is what you would award. It's got the ACE identifier so that you can look it up. You can look it up in the occupation section. You just type in the magic number, and there it is. Okay, now the occupation exhibit looks a little different than the course exhibit. Why? Because this is an occupation. This is work experience, not training. It tells you about the career pattern. You know, the occupational field, the career pattern, a description of what they do. And then it's got these recommendations. See all those weird letters and numbers up there? AS1, AS2, what all that stuff is? Those are Navy ranks and occupational specialties. And so on the person's transcript or DD-214, it's going to say one of those. And it's a progression. You start as an AS3, then AS2, then AS1, then AS chief, then AS senior chief. That's what those are. Okay, this person was an AS1, and so there's a recommendation for AS1. Okay, how would military experience be used in fulfilling requirements? Well, unit requirements, maybe. I personally have not heard of any community college, California community college, that awards credit for experience, for work experience, but there are some universities that do, or credit might be earned through something like a credit by exam where you have the competency and you just need to demonstrate the competency somehow. But if your campus does award credit for experiential learning, maybe work experience or something like that, then it might be used for that purpose, okay? It might be used to clear GE and graduation requirements if you just say, you know, any sort of service in the military for a certain length of time should clear health and PE, for example. It might work for major and major prep requirements if you if the major has some sort of internship or work experience requirement associated with it, okay? So for instance, like in our photography example, if there's an internship required in photography, or if there's a certain number of hours of work experience required, and your student was a combat photographer, that's probably going to cover that requirement, okay, or it could. All right, so that's pretty much a limit on experience. Does anyone in here, as regular practice, award credit for work experience? In the back, okay. Okay, thanks. All right, let's talk a little bit about military-friendly institutions. These are accredited institutions of higher education that are just like us. So this is probably the place that we feel the most comfortable. They might be a civilian college or university. They might be a military-affiliated traditional university, like Annapolis or West Point. That's like a regular old accredited campus, or a military-affiliated community college, like the Community College of the Air Force, which is also accredited, or a graduate university, same thing. Okay, what is a military-friendly institution? Well, I'm gonna define it just for me as something like this. Maybe it's a military affiliate place, or they have a large military population. You know, at Miramar, we have maybe 10 to 15% of our students are military or veterans, so we have a pretty large population. We offer courses on the base. We're very close to MCAS Miramar. Also, you might be a SOC consortium member. Who here knows that their college is part of SOC? Okay. Who here has no idea what I talk about, what I mean when I say SOC, other than what you put on your feet? Okay, good. All right. That's good. We'll talk about that. All right. Look, there's an acronym. Who wants to figure out what SOC is? Oh, all right. Who was that? Oh, too late. There we go. Okay, it's a Service Members Opportunity Colleges. All right, what is SOC? SOC is this consortium. It's a group of a lot of universities and colleges who basically say that they promise to be nice to military and veteran students. Okay, so they agree to a set of military-friendly principles and criteria that says we're going to try to be friendly. And so here's what friendly means, you know, reasonable transfer of credit, reduced academic residency, credit for military training and experience, including the ACE guide, see that? Credit for nationally recognized testing programs. So we're going to, I promise we'll talk about those at least a little bit. Okay. Because they are institutions of higher education, they do things like we do. They have official transcripts just like us. They make articulation agreements just like us. And then there's a subcategory of them. So there's a lot of institutions that are in SOC. In fact, yours might be. Did I have that on here? Yeah, is your institution in SOC? Handout 3 is a list of the California colleges and universities that are in SOC, that are part of the SOC consortium. So they're the ones that have signed a pledge to be nice to military members and veterans by doing these things. Okay? It's possible that your institution is on that list and you didn't even know that they made that pledge. Yes? You know, I don't have any more handouts, but perhaps you can share with your neighbors, and if you want them, I'll put some cards in the back and you can email me and I'd be happy to send them to you. Okay. Now there's lots of institutions that are listed on SOC that say that they're going to be friendly. And then there's a subset of those institutions that actually participate in a much more in-depth manner in articulation system called the SOC DNS system, the degree network system. What that is, it's a system of two-way or bilateral articulation. In other words, if you take my course, I take your course. And it's organized into these networks of disciplines. So Miramar College, for example, is in the Business and Administration of Justice networks. There's a separate system for 2-year and 4-year, and what it allows you to do is make student degree guarantee agreements. Okay, I have sort of an in-depth thing on this, and I want to make sure I don't chew up all of our time. We've got half an hour, is that right? Half an hour left, so I'll go through this a little bit. So the people that are in SOC that said they know for sure they're in SOC, who knows whether or not you participate in the DNS system, the degree network system? One person, okay. I'm gonna briefly go through it, and if you want to talk about it more later, I'll talk about it more. So if you participate in this system, basically it's a way of a student can sign an agreement with your institution saying that you promise that they can earn your degree even if they take courses from other institutions, because they're traveling if they're in the military, or sometimes veterans do this too, and then they can come back to your institution and use those credits, use those courses to clear your requirements. There's an agreement form, looks like that. So here's an example. A student might say that Miramar is a home campus. They're going to get our degree, and they have to take our AJ 230, and the student went to Hawaii. How do they complete our AJ 230? Well, so they're at a home campus, they're going to another college in Hawaii, they need to complete training, come back here. So you can open it up, there's this whole handbook, there's a whole Rosetta Stone kind of thing of how you can look up you know, a course at one institution. There's a Supra course number, kind of like CAN was, or kind of like CID is or will become. There's the same thing, there's this Supra number. You look up that number and then you can translate that into another community college, okay? So in this case, we're going to look up Miramar's AJ 230. There it is. The secret code number for that is LW011A. So we write that on the back of our envelope, and then we look up LW011A. There it is at the top. We find Honolulu Community College, and it's AJ 220 at Honolulu. So this is articulation. Honolulu and us, Miramar, have promised to accept each other's courses for our requirements, okay, through this network system. Okay? And so they take that cool. It is online. It's online at the SOC system. And if you Google SOC, that's the first thing that shows up, or I can send you that website. In fact, I think I have the websites listed in the last slide on here. Okay? Even if your institution isn't in SOC, it's kind of a handy tool to use sometimes to see if how credit will go back and forth to places if you're trying to guess. Sometimes you have those tricky students, you don't have an articulation agreement, they took classes at some campus way far away, you don't know how they're going to work or not going to work. I think this could be handy to figure that out because it's a way of seeing what other institutions have pledged to or what they claim their courses are.
Excuse me.
Yes?
SOC here, is that just confined to schools in the United States or schools abroad that might be?
Yeah, good question. Is this just confined to schools in the United States? It's, in order to be in SOC, you have to be accredited by an agency recognized by the U.S. Department of Education, I think, pretty sure. I have not seen any foreign institutions on here. However, there are a good number of U.S. institutions that offer classes at military bases and locations overseas. And so it's likely that you'll have military members that have coursework that they've taken at other places. Like in my reserve duty, I often go to Japan, for example, Yokosuka, and you go into the education office there, and there's like 5 universities that offer classes right there in Yokosuka, okay? But their U.S. universities offer classes there, so the students might have transcripts from them. Okay, yes?
In that system, is it a regional accrediting body, for example, like WASP or the North Atlantic? Is that the government body you're talking about, or is it just?
Yeah, it's a good question. The question is do places have to be accredited by a regional accrediting body to be a member of SOC? And I believe the answer is no.
So if you have a for-profit institution that accredits themselves in that organization, because they have their own accrediting firm, we don't take a lot of the for-profit. It's variable, even though the bands are WASP accredited. It's still very confusing. That doesn't necessarily mean just because they're in SOC that we can trust that the DNS, if they do it, will be certified by it.
Yeah, it's good. So this is a wonderful gray area, right? So I have this situation too. So what do you do if your district's policy is that you only accept credit from a regionally accredited institution, and yet your district or your college has signed the agreement to participate in SOC DNS, and therefore you've promised to honor the coursework from anybody else that's in there, and somebody else that's in there isn't regionally accredited? Yeah. I don't have an answer for you, and when I get that question, I send it to the evaluators at our district office. So I say, there you go. Yeah.
So if your school's name is on this SOC thing, do you have these agreements?
Yeah, good question. If your school's name is on that list, does that mean that you're listed in this cool Rosetta Stone looking thing? You might be listed in it, and you might not. If your school's name is on the list, it just means that you promise to be friendly. Okay? All it means is that you promise to do this. Okay? But there's a subset of campuses, there's a subset of institutions that promise to do this, to be friendly, that also do participate in SOC DNS. And in general, well, I think specifically there are institutions that teach courses on base, or that have large military populations, or that offer online programs that are often accessed by military people. And in order to be in SOC DNS, you have to get nominated and approved by a military service itself, because they spend a lot of money to make this whole system going. Okay, so you might be in there and you might not. Part of the reason I bring this up when I give this presentation is I find that when I'm presenting to counselors or articulations or folks that probably ought to know that they're in the system, they often don't know it, and they're surprised to see their institution on the list. So I'm trying to raise awareness that that's there. Yes, sir.
I'm a veteran, and say I'm getting out 6 months from now. So I'm looking at transitioning into civilian life. I'm looking at going to the school using my GI Bill. And I know I'm going to have to take basic math classes and basic English classes. Where do I go on the internet? What do I look for? Once I get out with my 214 and all the other, whatever I need to get out and fill out all the GI Bill requirements. What should I be looking at first? If I'm either 2 years out or a year out before I go out, I may want to take some coursework. What should I look at from those institutions? Because you would think with all the learned institutions and PhDs and heading up, and doctors heading up all these outreach centers and all this stuff, that they would understand the system outside their own system, and how would they translate to a guy that was 18 when he went in, he's now 24, 23, or 40, or 38. And he wants to find out, he wants a basic question. What is, if I take a math class from a school in Maryland through the internet, and is that going to be accredited for at Cerritos or at San Mateo or wherever?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the question is, big picture, veteran getting out of the military, they want to just start school, they want to make sure that whatever basic courses they take are going to be accepted widely in case they don't finish at the school they start with. What do they do? What criteria should they use to select that school or to make sure they're going the right place? Probably everyone in this room would have a slightly different answer to that question. My answer is going to be go to a school that is regionally accredited, okay, because those are the ones that are generally accepted widely, okay, and there's a difference between regional accreditation and other forms of accreditation.
No, you're an E45, everything in the last 10 years, 12 years was already laid out for you. You expect these schools to let you know. They don't let you know.
Yeah.
Until you get there and you find out your classes are closed and such. I'm just letting them, what should they look for, what's available for them via the internet. You're the learning person. You're the one that's providing that bridge. What should they look for on that bridge to cross?
Yeah, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, most of the service members now prior to getting out, 6 months or within a year of them exiting whatever branch that they're going to exit, have to go through what's called TAP class. It's a transitional class that talks about all the different programs and outreaches and ways that they can go over their SMART transcripts or go through ACE, but also bringing in EDD and other educational organizations to kind of explain this, because it is very, very foreign to us veterans. This isn't anything that we've had to go through. Like you said, everything's just do this. So they kind of explain the regional accreditation and transfer policies, and also how to find out if those schools are regional accreditation. Now, whether or not someone sleeps with that class or not is completely up to them. You know,
yeah. So
the water, but I can't make you drink it.
Yeah, thank you. So the comment is TAP class. That's the class that you take before you get out. They do cover some information about education, which is great. I went through TAP class, and they didn't talk at all about education, so I'm glad that they do now. That was quite a while ago. That much, okay.
It's focused, from what I understand, most of it focuses on employment, not on education.
Yeah.
And you got to keep in mind that these are also people that are excited about, I get to go home, I get to go home, I get to go home.
Yeah.
And then you get home, and then it's like, okay, what do we do?
Well, I think you bring up a really important point, and it's beyond this session, I think, to talk about it. But how do you get information out about what the world of higher education is like? You know, the truth is not all credit is the same, and some institutions accept credit from some places, and some don't accept credit from other places. Some institutions work really hard at outreach to students, especially to military students. Other institutions, like us in general, don't have the resources to work that hard, even though we have, the accreditation that people look for. So it's a challenging topic, I think. Yes, sir.
Some of those TAP sites would welcome outreach people from local campuses to come and fill that gap, because we're boggled by some of this stuff. I think some of the people who present the TAP modules don't know enough to do a credible job, and would welcome somebody to come in and pick up that piece forward.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. The comment is the people that do TAP classes at local bases and so on, it might be a good idea for the local institutions to come and do a presentation on how to use your education benefits when you get out. That's a great point. Thanks. So everyone take notes on that when you go back to your institution. These are ideas to bring back with you, and I'll bring back the same for mine. Okay, national exams. I kept saying we would talk about that. Okay. So in a national exam, so these are things like AP or IB. I don't know if national exam is the right word, but yeah, they're things that are offered widely. It's student demonstrates subject matter competency through a standardized examination. And I think most of us are familiar with AP and IB. The model for this is a student learns something in high school, usually, by taking an advanced class, and then they prove that they learned it by taking a test. And when they pass a test, most colleges and universities accept that to clear requirements, unit requirements, sometimes GE requirements, sometimes major requirements. There are also these other tests, CLEP and DSST, which are less well known, but are becoming more more well-known now that there are more military people out there. And who define those for chocolate? Or are we sick of the chocolate game? No.
College level examination.
Okay, college level, and DSST, anyone? Is it on that sheet?
Standardized test.
Okay. There'll be more at the back. All right. You know, I find with my presentations that people generally don't respond so well to my jokes, but they respond really well to the chocolate, so I keep going in that direction. Okay. So on the military transcript, if the student took one of these exams through the military, and they're free to many military members, it'll be, and it's documented that way, it'll be on the exam. So here's an example, CLEP, Spanish Level 1 and 2, and it's got the recommended units and so on. Okay, the documentation could be on that military transcript. You can also get it from the College Board, who does CLEP, or Prometric, who does DSST. They're free to military personnel, and they may be free to families, DoD, civilians, and others. Okay, there's a website that shows people how to do that. How might you use the exams? Sure. This is through the VA, and they've got a list of exams. I actually have a couple of hidden slides here that show the actual, when you click on that, what happens. But
So go to the Department of Veterans Affairs, and then where you click on this, click on what? To get this wings?
yeah, you could probably just search for exams, and it'll come up. But my point of putting it on here is people that are still active military generally know that they can take these exams for free, but veterans also may be able to take these exams for free or for a reduced price depending on their veterans benefits, which I'm not an expert in. And so they can learn about that by going to the VA website. I think that probably a lot of veterans don't know that they could go and take these exams. So in our, yes?
Okay, well, first of all, to access this, you can access it really easily from my webpage, which is veteraneducationsuccess.org. It's like the third link down is the national exams.
Thanks.
It costs 1 month of GI Bill benefits.
Okay.
So the veterans need to determine whether or not it's worth it to pay to have a month of benefit, because you talk about the BAH, the housing, which is a couple $1,000s that they would be using. But also some community colleges will not accept these. I was at a community college. We had a student who was one of our students, went off to Iraq, got the heck shot out of him, spent 2 years in military hospitals. He clept a bunch of classes, came back to our campus, and they would not accept any of it. But understand that there is a CSU MOU that the CSUs will accept it all. So I wrote our higher-ups a nice big email about how the student would never get a degree at our college, but we're going to send him down the road to the CSU where he will. So just be aware that that might be an issue on your campus. And a lot of it is out of ignorance. People don't know that it's something that the campus should be taking a look at.
Good thing. Yeah, we're going to cover that in a moment. We're going to cover the CSU policy in a moment, so we'll show you. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, can you repeat the website, and I'll say it over the loudspeaker? VeteranEducationSuccess.org. Thank you. So it's great to have such knowledgeable people in the audience. I appreciate that. It's a little intimidating, too, because what if you say something wrong? But it's wonderful to have you there. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so how might you use... Yes, please.
Just kind of piggybacking what she said, in our district, we have 2 community colleges, and one of them accepts CLEP, and the other one does not. So, so if I get a veteran that has a CLEP, I go, okay, go over to Fresno City, go ahead and be an official, and then we will honor them because we have a transcript that's together. So it's kind of knowing too how your schools.
Yeah. So this is. So what you've hit on, both of your comments have hit on, is sort of one of the areas that we've been in transition in for a few years in the world of articulation anyway, is using CLEP, and maybe we'll get to using DSST too eventually, in more widely, and being standardized in how we accept and use it more widely. So like you mentioned, the CSU system has made a system-wide agreement policy about how they're going to use it to clear GE requirements and unit credit and so on. They're kind of ahead of us in a way. They've already done that. And you know, the CSUs, they're, say what you will about them, they are one system, 23 campuses, and they have the central campus office, and they make decisions centrally sometimes. We're 72 different independent political entities that have 112 colleges under us, right? Much more complicated. So, but we're moving in that direction, and there's been stuff come out from the Academic Senate, statewide Academic Senate, and stuff from that has gone through the articulation officer channels and probably transfer center director and counselor channels as well about how to try to get your college to suggest that they align with how the CSUs use these tests, which we're going to cover in a moment. Okay, so you might use it for these different things. You could use, if you're trying to make decisions about using some of these national exams, I just wanted to point out that there is a tool that SOC puts out. It's called the SOC DNS Credit Evaluation Supplement to aid in these kind of decisions. What it does, just like it does for military credit, from military coursework or experience, it translates various kind of credit sources into SOC DNS course categories, which then, if you're in SOC DNS, you can use to equate to your own courses, or even if you're not, you can read about what those courses are and see how it might work. So for example, this is that little guide. There's a CLEP test called American Government. ACE thinks that it's worth 3 units, and ACE thinks that it clears the American Government SOC DNS course category. And remember, ACE is a group of faculty members in the discipline who have looked at it. Also, as we mentioned before, this is the old version. There's a newer version that's come out since then. But the CSU system has published and updated their list of national exams and how they apply it towards GE. And they've added a bunch of CLEP exams. There's another page after this one with the CLEP exams on it. So notice, they accept the CLEP American Government. Okay, score 50, 3 units of credit. It clears area D8 for CSU GE. And so one argument you might, I'll get you a second. One argument or one discussion you might have on your campus that I had on my campus is, hey, look, if every CSU in the state has agreed to accept these exams in this way, and if it benefits our veteran students and so on, can we talk about maybe doing the same thing with us? And if we don't, what's going to happen to our students? Well, maybe they'll all go to our sister campus that does accept it, or maybe they'll, you know, it's good enough for all the CSU campuses, but it doesn't clear our requirement. Maybe they won't even get an associate's degree. They'll just go on without one. You know, there's a line of reasoning you can follow if you want to pursue that. So, but it's important to know that the CSU system does accept them, and they've cleared them for GE. So you in the back, sir, and then you.
Yeah, to get rid of the negligence and ignorance that occurs within these institutions in regards to alignment of these credits, if you're a advocate for veterans, would you seek a solution, a remedy in the courts, a remedy, an administrative remedy, or a legislative remedy? What would it take in order to get these things lined up?
Yeah, the question is, because different institutions each have their own requirements and each have their own ways of satisfying those requirements, if you want to pursue getting them aligned, how would you do it? Courts, legislation, and I forgot what the other one was.
The other one would be an immediate administrative remedy.
Yeah, or administrative remedy. I guess those are all ways that you can pursue it. I think for us in this audience, people that work in the community colleges, what I've done is I have tried to pursue it through an administrative remedy, meaning I go to my faculty and I go to the Academic Senate and I go to the other committees that I need to go to on my campus and my district, and I present the case that
How much time does it take?
Well, it took me a year. Yeah, but those are solutions. Thank you. Yes, or pathways.
Are you going to put this online for us to access after the conference? I mean, is it
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Can you do it through the fact website? If you do it that way, we just do it on the fact site and then.
Okay, I imagine so. Yeah. And I'm going to I swear I'll stick my cards in the back, and if you want one emailed directly to you, you can do that. And I can also send you some of the source documents that I've used for this, okay? So I'm happy to do that as well. And this particular document is available on the CSU website under GE, as you probably know. Yes?
That was my question.
Yeah, go to the CSU website, go to academic affairs, something like that, and it's under the GE section. Okay, wow, we're almost done, and we're almost out of time, too. So some best practices, we've discussed most of these, I believe. So one is go back and be advocates for your community college to accept ACE Guide recommendations for the use of credit, just like the CSU system does. I think most of the people that work in my field, the articulation officers, most or all of us believe that the more that we can all align to whatever the CSU system is doing, since they seem to be moving ahead on this quicker than others, the better. And you know, our students more and more are going from institution to institution to institution. The more that we can align our requirements, the easier it's going to be for students to do that. And in particular, our military and veteran students, because they're the ones that have these kinds of credit, and they often have credit from many different institutions, more so than our other students do. Okay, please use military training experience to certified CSUG Area E with the caveat about the units, because the CSUs will accept that if you do.
I had a point on that too.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't figure out within the CCCs how to give better credit for this, because of some of the policies in the CSUs of special admit for veterans, if they grant much more credit than the community college, we're just going to lose them.
Yeah, it's a good point. If the community colleges don't follow suit, it may be that they just don't bother coming to us, or
several that have gone over to the local CSU because they were much closer. They were close to the 60 or maybe over 60, but with not all the GE, but they couldn't get it all accredited at our college, so they applied for special admit that way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So students might just leave the community college if you don't, if we don't align.
I thought the statewide academic senate endorsed the CLEP and encouraged local senates and curriculum committees to create, you know, CLEP.
Yes.
Provided as information in the catalog.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so the statewide academic senate has endorsed us aligning to this to the CSUs and to make those determinations on the local campus, and it's fully supported by our statewide faculty senate. That's right. Okay, some other ideas which other breakout sessions in this conference are about: military-friendly web pages and so on, flexible enrollment deadlines, deferred tuition, scholarships. Yes, all that stuff. Okay. Many of you might be a counselor specializing in military students, but if you don't, it's possible, or it's maybe a good idea to have one. I think there are issues that are unique to military and veteran students that maybe aren't unique to, you know, that other students don't have. So I think it's maybe wise to have a counselor that knows more about that and works in that area. Students that have military experience should definitely have their military transcripts on file and evaluated, because that's how they can get the credit that we're talking about. That's the official way to do it. Okay, and make sure when you're counseling students that, you know, bear in mind the calculations of CSU transferable units, and especially if your campus has not aligned your policies to what the CSU does, that means that the associate degree applicable units is going to be a different value than the CSU transferable units. In fact, they may have many more CSU applicable units than they have associate degree applicable units, right? Because if you don't accept ACE Guide credit, but the CSUs do, so just bear in mind that it's the receiving institution that the student wants to get their degree from that you have to think about when you're doing this. Okay, we talked a little bit about clearing major requirements and so on. If your institution doesn't already do that as a matter of practice, and I think almost none of us do, you might consider suggesting to the student that they petition to substitute credit for military training for major requirements. So an example, on my campus, we teach aviation. We teach aviation maintenance and aviation operations, and we get a lot of students from the base, from Marine Corps Air Station San Diego, Miramar, that come to our campus, and they've done that work. They've turned wrenches on engines, and they've fixed airplanes and that sort of thing. They can go and talk to the faculty. They can petition to clear certain requirements in the major, and on a case-by-case basis, through those petitions, that can happen, and that does happen regularly on my campus. Okay, there's some of the resources I used in this presentation, and I'm happy to send you the presentation. I'm also happy to send you PDF versions of the handouts. That's my information, and I'll put some cards in the back. We're almost out of time, I think, but any last-minute comments or questions? Yes?
Is there a listserv for discussion issues for those institutions that are starting or have been veteran-friendly or veteran-serving, either, especially the community colleges?
The question is there a listserv for veterans-friendly California community colleges? I'm not aware of one. Is anyone aware? Okay, maybe there ought to be. Yeah. Okay, another question here. Yes. Oh yeah, am I going to touch up on UC? What I know about UC is kind of what we talked about earlier, which is they've made a policy statement saying that they're willing to consider military coursework if it can be demonstrated that that coursework is similar to a course taught at the UC, and that it's up to each UC campus to make that determination. The last time I asked them about this, there was no plan to pre-evaluate or to make a published articulation or anything like that, which doesn't help us very much, right? Because, you know, so, okay, just to put on my editorial hat, I find that at the universities, often they think about things like transfer and articulation as events that have happened in the past and that are now being evaluated, okay? So it's already occurred. For us, we think about all those things as tools to help a student to plan for the future, right? So we need to know beforehand what it is that they're going to do. I think often that shift in perspective doesn't always happen at the university side. So, you know, but we're getting there. I mean, they want to help. It's just they're not sure how to make that happen. But that's, you know, at least they've agreed to consider it. You know, in the past they just wouldn't even consider it. Yeah, and I understand they're making some sort of panel or something or a working group to find ways to broaden that process. So maybe it'll happen in the future. I also wanted to touch on credit by exam. You know, we have the ability at the community colleges to offer credit by exam. So if your faculty wants to, they can develop a comprehensive examination that covers everything in the course outline. They can administer it to students, and if the student passes it, then they have passed the college class. It will appear on the transcript with a little code saying it was passed by credit by exam. That's one way to do what we talked about earlier about if you have OJT sort of things from military service and you want to demonstrate that you're competent in that area, that you don't need to take the class, perhaps you could pass it credit by exam. And perhaps your faculty would be willing to develop something to help show that.
Yeah, we do that at our school, but then the faculty also says certain classes are not, you know, challenged by exam.
Yeah.
So that you can't, no, you have to take this because the information is so vital.
Yeah.
But if you've been doing it for 2 years out in the field, actually practicing it, then you're not going to learn much more from the book.
Yeah, good point. It is up to the faculty what they want to offer or not offer. Yeah.
I mean, it's great in some areas, but in certain classes it falls short. So it's give or take.
Yeah, thank you. There was another question or comment here.
I'm just, one of the things that I find real difficult to do is, for example, I've had several students who are, say if they're a crim major going to a Cal State U, well, they have general ed and then they have maybe 2 major prerequisites. So they end up with 43, 46 units, and then, so when you write their SAP, you write all those classes down. Then we evaluate them at the community college level, and they have, I don't know, 30 units from the military. Well, then we can't put anything else on their SAP. They're basically just doing that. I call our local Cal State, and they can't tell, well, we have to evaluate them. We don't know if we're going to take those 30 units. But we know that they're not going to. But unless we get something in writing from the Cal State, we can't put it on an SAP. So the student now has to apply, be told no, and then we can take electives. That's very frustrating.
Okay, so that
complete the 60 units.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is about some sort of requirement to pre-evaluate to complete the 60 units. You know, my opinion is that's not required. There is an executive order from the State Chancellor's Office. I'd be happy to send it to you. It says every CSU campus will accept ASCII credit as we described. Okay, there's no gray area. They will accept it. And if you can demonstrate on a student transcript that they have those units, the CSU is required to accept it. And I understand they've come up with a way to put that on the application for military credit so that you can even do it when they apply on CSU Mentor. And if you want to email me, I'd be happy to send you that executive order or give you the reference to it. And perhaps that's something that your local CSU campus hasn't quite adopted. Yeah. Okay, last one in the back. Or are we done? Okay.
Interested in a listserv, put that on your evaluation suggestions. I mean, if one person does it, we'll ignore. But if a few of us in here said we went to the session, we'd like to have a listserv for all those people who have veterans programs or developing them, so we can start talking about these things in actual real time. That would be really helpful.
Okay, thanks. So the suggestion is on your evaluation forms, in addition to writing all the things that you hated about my presentation or liked, make sure to write that you want a veterans-friendly CCC listserv. And thank you so much for your attention and the wonderful questions and comments. I really appreciate it.